Hello, good afternoon, and welcome to episode 87 of Talking Asperger's with Andrew. My name's Andrew Marsh, and I'm autistic. My representation of autism is Asperger syndrome, or as they call it nowadays in the DSM-5, type 1 autism. I don't like that. I'm going to refer to it as Asperger syndrome because that's what I have. That's what I'm comfortable referring to myself as. And I now work with employers to help them manage people like me in their businesses. How do I do this? Well, before I knew I had Asperger's, but I've always known I was different, I used to be a geologist in the construction industry, predominantly from a design point of view, consulting engineers. And it's fair to say that in some places I was well treated, well looked after, and given respect and was able to do good work. And in other places that wasn't so much the case, where I was the one who had to adjust to their system, their rules, because they weren't dealing with people who were neurotypical. They just wanted one size fits all, do it this way, bam, 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 gave no appreciation for the skills and the abilities, the difference that other people bring to the business. So I struggled in those circumstances. And I now sat back a little while ago and I thought, well, put yourself back in that situation, knowing that you now have Asperger's syndrome. How would you manage me? How would I manage someone presenting as me in my business? And I developed my own 7 steps program, and I now work with employers to help them better manage people who have Asperger's syndrome. That's what I do. That's what I love doing. I love being able to help someone out, an employer or a person, someone on the spectrum, um, help them help themselves in business, because there are things that the individual can do as well as the business. And I think we need to understand that it's a two-way street and communication is the key. So today's topic is a really important one. It's one of the most important topics in managing people. Doesn't matter whether they're neurodivergent or neurotypical. This is about managing people. And all of the things that I'm going to talk about today work perfectly well and effectively and efficiently with anyone. It's called effective leadership. And to be an effective leader, one of the most important things you have to do is listen. There's an old saying, you've got one mouth and two ears, you need to listen twice as much as you talk. There's truth in that adage. The important thing is to listen to the people that you have in your teams. What are they saying to you? If they're all saying much the same thing, the issue isn't them, the issue is you. So how do you lead effectively? And what is the role of a team manager, team leader? Well, I'm going to start with something that I'm going to keep coming back to during the course of today's webinar, and that is, it is the leader's job, and I use the word leader rather than manager. I'll come back to that again in a minute. It is the leader's job to manage every single member of their team in the way that makes them their most efficient and effective and productive best. I'm going to say that again. It's the leader's job to manage every member of their team in the way that that employee is at their most efficient, effective, and productive best. That does not mean one size fits all. It absolutely means the opposite. It means that if you've got someone who's neurodivergent, they might need to be managed in a different way from their neurotypical colleagues. Because if you only cater for your neurotypical colleagues, guess what? That neurodivergent person isn't going to necessarily understand what you've asked them to do, how you've wanted it done, how you've wanted it presented, what images, what information that they needed to understand so that they can present what you've asked them to do. So if you have neurodivergent people in your teams and you're just cater for the neurotypical, you might as well not have that person, which is the wrong attitude, by the way, because that person might be the spark that has the different idea, the different thought to solve a long-standing problem we have. And they're great problem solvers because they think differently. So come back to that statement. It's your job to manage each person in the manner that allows them to be their most efficient, effective, productive best. So what does that mean? It means that for someone like me, who has Asperger's syndrome, there is no point giving me a 50-page briefing document that you've got from somewhere and say, that's what I want you to do, have it done by the end of the week. because we won't be able to understand and comprehend that document in the way that can lead us to extract out the information that we need. So this 50 pages, what does it actually mean? Does it mean I want you to do these three things, and those three things each have three parts to them? So there's 9 things you're looking for. If you'd said that, then everyone would be able to understand that they're looking for certain things rather than trawl their way through 50 pages of bump and fluff, which doesn't mean anything. Genuine. I've seen 50-page proposals. I've seen 50-page briefing documents. Trust me, they don't work. What you need is a 4-page briefing document at the most that has bullet points you are going to look at. Boom, boom, boom. Summary. I want you to present this. Next chapter, next section. Boom, boom, boom. I want this presented, this summary, this type of information. Section 3, boom, 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 and so on. So that you have clear titles, which guide you into what you're looking for, clear objectives within those titles as to you're looking for A, B, and C within that, and how you want it presented, what you want to get back. That is a proper briefing document. That is what you might have the 50-page briefing document from your client, but you as the team leader, the team manager, has to disseminate that down into ways that are manageable and understandable for all your team. And like I said earlier, that might mean that you need to present it differently to the neurotypical employees. So you might need to prepare 2 documents or 3 documents so that every person understands it in the way that makes them enable them to do the work in the way that you want them to do it. Produce the end product that you are expecting. So it's really, really important. I cannot overstress this, how important it is to make sure that you brief everyone in the way that they understand best. Because if you brief me and I don't understand, one of several things is going to happen. I'm going to sit there and I'm going to be, cross look, not sure, slightly defensive posture for arms folded. And when you come to, are there any questions? You'll say, yes. Bam, bam, bam. List of questions, and that takes the meeting on for another hour because you haven't been clear to that person. Or that you have got your team so tightly wound that they're not, that you don't encourage any questions. And so you will have that person going off and trying to do what they think you want them to do, trying to read between the lines, trying to second guess. And if ever there is a recipe for disaster, it's trying to second guess your boss or another team member. So they will try and do that. And then when you come back and see how they're getting on, oh, I didn't want you to do, that's not what I said. Actually, you weren't clear in what you said, and you didn't explain it in the way that enabled me to understand. Then you get the defensive leader, the defensive manager, whose ego has got in the way, shouting and bawling and screaming, and this person isn't doing, this person isn't complying. I'm going to write you up for not compliance. I'm going to write you up for this. I'm going to give you a final warning. When all of the problem is the effective communication from the leader. Think about that. Effective communication means you have to find out what makes that person tick in your team and how can you do it. Because people with autism and people with Asperger syndrome tend to be very visual people. Excuse me one moment. So I like to see something. So I like to see a diagram. I like to see a picture. I like to see a drawing. I like to see a spreadsheet. I like to see a graph or a Venn diagram or a table that summarizes all that bump. I've extracted that out. This is what we mean by section 1. Boom, there's a picture, image, diagram, figure that I can see. That way I got the visual representation of what you're asking me to do. That will then make sense to me. Ah, I get it. I understand. Great. Because what that will mean is that when I'm doing the work that I'm doing for you, I will be presenting back to you images, pictures, spreadsheets, diagrams, figures, photographs, etc. Because that's what you gave me. That's what I understood. We had the conversation. That's what I'm giving back to you because that visually represents how I have done the work and what the conclusions are. And that's the end result. So in my time in consulting engineering, that aspect of my work worked brilliantly for me because we would get drawings. That's a site plan. Great. It's that size building, it's that many floors, it's got this amount of car parking next to it, or it's a road, or it's a bridge, or it's whatever. It's a it's a visual image, a drawing of what the job is. Brilliant. I can look at that and I can immediately get an understanding of it. Great. Let's have a look at that in more detail. So I was always a great one for coloring in drawings. Progress meetings were fantastic for me because I could color in drawings and say, well, this is what we've done. This section over here, which is red, is because the ground conditions are like this, and it means that. This section over here is blue because the ground conditions are different, or the load from the building is different. So we have to look at different sides of foundation solutions. And so I would color code them up, the drawings have a different color, maybe have some highlighter pens and some little, effectively like a little speech bubble leading to it, so that that was a visual representation. So when in the meeting, someone said to me, Andrew, how are we getting on with what we're doing? I would say, get my drawing out, present it in the middle of the table so that everyone could see it. And I would say, here, here, and here, these are the issues, these are the points, this is what we know, this is what we don't know, these are what I think we should be progressing in a certain way. And then everyone would have the opportunity to say, oh, I like that, I like that, that fits with me. Oh, actually, that doesn't quite work for me. And then you have the conversation about how to make that work better within the multidisciplinary teams that I worked in. So visual imaging is key to people with Asperger's and people with autism, because for a start, it'll cut down 10,000 words if you can show a picture or an image with some annotation on it. Fantastic. That works well. That is how to explain something to someone who is neurodivergent, sorry, so that they can get it. And once they've got it, wow, we're away. So it really is important to understand how that person works, how all the members of your team work, and how they receive, perceive, and understand information. It's really, really critical to getting the job done well the way you want it to. And effective leadership is about that. It's about communication. It's about understanding how each member of your team works best, because ultimately, your job is to get as much productivity out of your team as you can, isn't it? You've got a certain number of units or a certain amount of work needs doing, or whatever your metrics are for your business, what your KPIs are. You've got a certain level that you've got to reach, whether that's having this report done by Friday or having it done by Tuesday of next week or whatever. That's what you're measured on. Your business will work on that basis at various levels throughout the company, throughout the business. So it's really important to understand how each one works, rather than one size fits all. Because one size fits all, you're gonna miss some members of your team, aren't going to get it. So the team full of 8 people, if you've got 2 neurodivergent people, you're only going to have 6 people who are working effectively if you haven't briefed those 2 neurodivergent people in the way that they understand what they need to do. So you might think, oh God, those 2 people are at it again. They're not understanding. They're not listening to what I'm telling them. I'm going to be behind because those 2 people aren't pulling their weight. So you write them up. You report them up the way at your monthly meetings that you have with your bosses. These 2 people, again, they're not pulling their weight. We've really got to do something about them. We need to have a chat with HR about them. But actually, the problem isn't the member of staff at all. You're not briefing them in the way that they understand the task that you set them to do. Do that, and you'll have 8 people in your team working effectively, efficiently, and productively. So when you have those situations where you see people who are not pulling their weight, just take a moment to think, why are they not pulling their weight? Are they slacking? Are they shirking? Are they having cigarette breaks every 20 minutes? Are they taking 2 hours for lunch? Are they spending too long at the water cooler and at the photocopier and at the printer and at the coffee machine? Those are things you can easily remedy with effective time management. But if the person is grafting, doing work that they think that they need to do, but you haven't briefed them properly, then if they're not pulling their weight, it's because you haven't briefed them properly, not because they're slacking or shirking. So be aware of that when you have situations where You might think, not all my team's pulling their weight. Take a close look at how you've managed them. Is it something you're doing? Is it your communication, your leadership that is missing them? And they're dropping off the radar because you haven't managed them properly. So if you're having those situations, you need to take a look at yourself, because it could be that it's your leadership that is causing that problem. I'm going to take you back a few decades. Doesn't matter when we're in the 60s, 70s, 80s, or 90s, because the 90s started 32 and a third years ago. So micromanagers, there you go. I've said it. I have worked for some people who really, in all honesty, shouldn't be allowed to manage anyone to do anything. And they couldn't manage their way out of a wet paper bag with an instruction manual because they are inept, which comes from two or three reasons. One, they're so overworked and overstressed, they just can't see the wood for the trees. That's fixable. Give them some support. Number two, they don't know how to manage people. They've never been trained. And number three, they're just inept. Because there is an assumption at certain levels within certain industries where you've had X number of years experience, you've got chartered or you've reached a certain level of qualifications, when it is deemed by people in power with authority that because you've got X years of experience, you know how to manage people. So you're promoted to senior level or a principal level or a supervisor level. And you may have been given no training at all. Now, there are some people who are naturally gifted at managing people and glide through it effortlessly and get really good productivity because they understand the people they're working for. But there are some people who, as I said earlier, should not be allowed out with a shopping trolley without adult supervision because they just don't know how to manage. That partly is a fault of the business for not identifying them as needing training. If they've had training and they're still getting it wrong, you need to think about whether they have a role within your business. Because if they're always complaining that everyone else is screwing up and not delivering for you, it could just be that they're the problem. They need training, they need guidance, they might need putting to a different role within the business. And let someone else take the reins who knows how to manage and is trainable in how to manage and lead teams. That's a tough decision, but if you don't, you're just going to keep failing. And one of these days, those failures are going to bite you in the bum really hard. And it won't be at that level that it's hurt. It won't be at the level above that. It won't be at the level above that. It'll be at the C level. It'll be at the boardroom level where a client has complained or you've had a design that's failed or an end result that hasn't worked. Client or customer picks up the phone, gives you an earful because it hasn't worked. That comes to you at the C-suite. At the board level, that's where that comes to. So then you've got to fathom out where in the system the problem is. And the easiest thing to do is to pick the lowest person on the lowest rung and blame them, when it might not be their problem. It might not have been a problem of their doing. It could be that their manager is inept and hasn't been leading the team effectively so that every member of the team can be at their effective, efficient, and productive best. I keep coming back to that, but that's the that's the mantra for today's talk. It's your job to manage your team so that every employee can be at their effective, efficient, and productive best. I should have a banner going across the top, along the bottom, like a little ticker tape roll. Don't know how to do that yet. Haven't worked that one out. But that is the key. Communication and how you lead is the key. Lead by example. There's a wonderful image of it's a very simple image. It's of a pharaoh or someone like a pharaoh sitting on a block, and there's 5 people pulling the block. And the Pharaoh was sitting there in all his majesty saying, why aren't we moving very fast? The second image is the leader not sitting on the block of rock, but the leader is at the front of the row of people that are pulling the block, saying, this is how we do it. I'm mucking in with you. Let's do this together. Let's pull this block along. It's a wonderful image. I wish I'd had it to hand, and I would share the screen and show you. But it's really important that the leader doesn't sit there in their high tower with their clipboard and their stopwatch going, oh, you were a minute back. You were a minute late back from lunch today. I'm going to write you up. That wasn't acceptable practice in the 1980s and 1990s. It certainly shouldn't be acceptable now. We have to have flexibility in the working place. If you look at recruiting, if you look at what people are looking for when they are searching for jobs and having interviews and looking at packages, yes, the salary is important. Yes, the position they're in is important, but they will also be looking at flexibility of working times, flexibility of hours. Can they take time off by accruing time by working 45 hours one week and then do 35 hours the next week? All of those things. The flexibility to be able to go and have a dentist appointment without losing half day annual leave. Excuse me a moment. And that's what people are looking for. They want the flexibility. So it's not just about salary and position and status. They want flexibility. They want to know what your childcare policies are like. They want to know if you've got a crash. They want to know if they can be able to, God, something's happened at school with my kids. I need to go home now and go and sort out the problem at school. They're going to want to know that they can do that, rather than have to take half day off to go to the doctors or to the dentist or go and sort out problems with their kids at school. They want that flexibility. That's what effective leadership is about. It's giving people that flexibility, because ultimately you have to have a position of trust. Because as a leader, as a manager, you're trusting that your team is going to do what you've asked them to do. Or if they've got problems, they will come and ask you. That is one of the other key aspects of effective leadership. It's the old-fashioned, my door is always open. Yes, it should be. But what that really means is I am here and available if you've got questions. Now, it might be that I've shut my door because I've got a meeting with the client. Fine, no problem at all. You'll be able to tell when I come out, because I'll come out, the client will have left. Come and see me then. Or if you're not sure that you feel as though you can knock on my door, send me an email. Say, I'd like to see you this afternoon to discuss something about the project. It's important. Then the boss should then come out of his office and say, yep, got your email. Why don't we set something up at 4 o'clock? We'll get a cup of tea and you can come in and tell me what the nature of the problem is. That's how you do it. That's how you do it. It's not difficult. Old phrase from whenever it was, way back when, it's not rocket science. It is not difficult to do these things. It just requires the right mindset about what are your objectives? What are your objectives in business? What are your objectives in business? You want to produce something, whether you're consulting or building widgets or making ball bearings or making a car, or you're an accountant and you've got your client's turnover is £1 million this year. They want to know what their profit and loss is. They're going to need to know that. So they hire you. You're the accountant. You're the professional accountant. You've got all of whatever your end result is, to whether it's a specific client like a government agency, or it's 5,000 customers who bought your latest game machine, and that might be 100,000 customers or 1 million customers. If you've got it right and the word of mouth gets out that, hey, the new thing that they've got, it's brilliant, by the way, and social media is booming with it, you want to make sure that you can deliver 1 million units of that when you need to. So really important that you understand what it is you're in business for. Ultimately, you need to look after your employees. Richard Branson famously said it. If you look after your employees first and train them well enough so that they can leave, but treat them well enough so that they want to stay, that's brilliant. So Train your people, train your staff, give them the training so that they can be at their best. They can be productive, efficient, valued. Valued, really important criteria for why someone stays in a job. Yeah, you get your salary and you've got your days holiday and maybe you've got your pension plan and all the rest of it. If you're not valued, you won't stay. Trust me, if you're not valued, there will eventually come a point where you've been pushed too many times and you go, do you know what? I don't need this. There are other places out there who would jump at having my skills. And so they leave. You've then got to rebuild, particularly if that's a reasonably senior person. It costs a lot of money to replace a reasonably senior person. It does. You've got lost productivity. If they're managing, you've lost a manager who's going to take over the reins. And are they compatible with the team? Have they got to relearn how to manage that team? All of these things, it costs time for someone to go through CVs. It costs time to set up interviews. It takes time to do all of the things that form part of the process that starts when someone walks into your door, walks into your room, your meeting, get it right, Andrew, walks into your office with an envelope that says, I'm leaving. There's my resignation. All of the things that start from that take time, cost money. So if you can retain your staff, retain your good people who are doing great work, it's an awful lot easier to do business well when your teams are working effectively, efficiently, productively, and everyone is valued. Do that, and you'll have a great team. Ultimately, when that happens, there will be some people who will naturally want to move on. That's part and parcel of the business. That's what happens sometimes. But what you want is for them to step up to their manager's job and their manager to step up to the level above that, so that you're keeping continuity of your team, you're promoting from within, you're keeping the culture, you know the people that you have, and things work. One of the great challenges of business is, particularly when you're employing managers and leaders and supervisors, is you're not quite sure what you're going to get until they turn up on Monday morning. Trust me, you're not. And you've taken a chance. You've taken a gamble on this person from their CV, from their references, from their interview, how they did, all of that. You still don't know what that's going to be like till they turn up 9 o'clock Monday morning. Tricky. So if you can look after the people that you've got, make them feel valued by how you lead. Give people the responsibility. If they're showing that they can do it, give them the responsibility to do a bit more, because that's the way that they will go up, and that's the way that they will push you up the ladder as you go together. So effectively, let me just see what I've said. Yes, you have to treat each person as an individual, not one size fits all. Please don't do one size fits all. It never worked in the 60s, 70s, and 80s, and it's not going to work now. And as I alluded to a little earlier on, we are now in the third decade of the 21st century. I'm going to say that again. We are in the third decade of the 21st century, and the 1980s started 42 years and 8 months ago. Or was it 43 years? It's a long time ago. The 1990s was 33 years ago. If you look back and fondness and think, oh, the 1990s, yeah, it was just, 5 or 6 years ago, you're in for shock, because the 1990s started 32, 33 years ago. We have to evolve how we manage our teams. We have to be leaders who are inspiring our teams to do great work. And the way to do that is to communicate with them and be effective leaders and not be micromanagers. If you've got micromanagers who sit there with a clipboard and a stopwatch, doing this every time someone goes out the room, oh, they go to the toilet, I'm going to clock that. Oh, 2 minutes late coming in for work, I'm going to clock that. I want to make a note of that. You will lose people. You will lose good people. Your turnover will be high. And your bosses will be going, well, it's just the nature of the business, it's the industry, there's always a high turnover. Well, that might be the case, but why not be different? Why not be the leader and have leaders in your teams who are managing your teams effectively, efficiently, so that your teams can be productive? That's what you want. And if that all happens, you have staff that are valued, you're making a profit, your business is thriving, you keep your customers happy, keep your clients happy. That's a win-win. That's what you have to be able to do. And you can't do that if you ignore how you set everything up and you manage people and how you brief people. So it all starts with communication. Everything starts with communication. Get that right, brief people, make them feel comfortable to ask questions and have the answers. If you haven't got the answer to a question, that's fine. You might not. But say, I will look that up and I will come back to you later on today, or I'll speak to you tomorrow morning about it. Never let it slip. Never let it slip. Even if you have to ask someone else and ask a more senior person, been asked this question, I don't really know the answer. What's the answer to that? There's no shame in saying, I don't know the answer. It's an awful lot better than giving a bunch of BS, which is wrong and could put your company in jeopardy because someone has spouted off something that is wrong, could jeopardize your reputation. So if you don't know, look it up. Ask someone. That's the way to do that. So I think we've got to the end of today, because it is really all about just that simple thing of understanding who you have in your teams and how do I best manage them so that they can be at their productive, efficient, effective best. That's it. That's today's topic. Effective leadership is about getting that right. You get that right, everything else will drop into place. So my name's Andrew Marsh and I'm autistic, and I work with employers to help them better manage people like me in their business. I offer a free 30-minute consultation service to anyone who wants to come chat with me about whether I can help them in their business. How are they dealing with it? How are they dealing with neurodiversity? How are they dealing with the Equality Act of 2010? And if that's the first time you've heard of that phrase, you need to look up the Equality Act of 2010. Some wonderful things in there about your obligations to your staff. I can help you with that. I can help you make the reasonable adjustments that you will need so that everyone in your team has a level playing field. The easiest reasonable adjustment that people refer to is we've got a lady who works for us in accounts, and she's in a wheelchair. Great. What's the outside of your building look like? Oh, we got 6 steps. How's the lady in the wheelchair supposed to get into your building? Oh, I don't know. We'll build a ramp. Good idea. That's a reasonable adjustment for someone in a wheelchair so that they can access your building and work. For neurodivergent people, there are other reasonable adjustments that you might have to make. For someone who, let's just suppose that you have someone in your team who's a great worker, never a problem, does great, efficient, effective work, brilliant. Let's suppose, unfortunately, they have a car accident and they smash their legs up, damage their back. Everything else about them is fine. Their cognitive abilities and their mental abilities are absolutely fine. So they've been off work for 6 months. They've just learned how to walk again. But they might be in a wheelchair, or they might need a cane or a Zimmer frame to get about. But what they really need is a properly supportive chair to be able to sit in to work. But that chair might cost you £400. Would you buy that chair for £400 so that that person can come to work and be effective, efficient? Or would you say, we're not paying £400 for a chair, just wait for them to come back, and that might be another 2 years down the line? You're losing out on a valued worker. They're not at work. They're not contributing to your business. So a reasonable adjustment in that circumstance would be the £400 chair. Not all, in fact, most reasonable adjustments don't cost anything. They take a little bit of thought. And on that thought, I will leave you for today with my final summary of exactly that phrase that I said right at the beginning. It's your job as a leader to help your employees be at their most productive, efficient, and effective best by leading them in the way and briefing them and managing them in the way that makes them at their most effective, productive best. And that means that you might need to manage different people in your teams in a different way in order to achieve that. Otherwise, all you're doing is one size fits all, and you're losing some of your team members because you're not managing them properly. It's your choice. But if someone comes at you with an Equality Act claim, you better make sure that you've got all your ducks in a row and you've complied. Because if you haven't, you're in trouble. So that's all we have for this week. Next week's topic, I'm not sure yet. I will be posting that on Friday or Saturday as to what next week's topic will be. And the video for this webinar will be posted on my YouTube channel tomorrow. So please look, like, and subscribe and visit my YouTube channel on all sorts of things relating to Asperger's and autism in the workplace. This is week 87. There are 86 other videos on my YouTube channel, and there's bound to be something there that will resonate with you and help you manage people better in the workplace who are autistic or neurodivergent, or the techniques and skills and the strategies that I've come up with work everywhere. And it's basic good management practice. So you don't have to have neurodivergent people for the techniques that I've said today to work effectively and efficiently in your business. That's all we have time for. Take care. Look after yourselves. See you next week.